Hello, new player. Welcome to the Battledrome.
Oh, hey. Welcome to the Battledrome. Here, in the world of Chaotic, players play by joining with their monsters and creating incredible battles that are televised throughout. I brought you here through the power of video editing so that I could teach you a little bit more about Chaotic, but I realize it might not be the type of, calm atmosphere that you should learn in. So, what I'm going to do, we're going to go ahead and hit the button on our scanners, and I'll meet you back in my room to learn more about Chaotic. Hey, welcome back from Cringe Town. Hope you enjoyed your stay. I know it's been a little while, but I haven't really been allowed to upload a video. In fact, this is my second shooting of this video. Hope you like it. Back in the year 2000, there was a popular Danish card game named Chaotic Now or Never. Unlike most modern card games at the time, this game had an entire world of lore and characters and creatures to introduce you to. And for all intents and purposes, it was chaotic to play. And then in 2007, for reasons that Wikipedia doesn't want to tell me, 4Kids reached out to the creator of Chaotic, Brian C. Cannon, and brought it to America as the anime and card game known simply as Chaotic. Now, neither the card game nor the anime were the biggest success, and ultimately it was part of 4Kids' big downfall. They actually tried to sue Brian C. Cannon for the rights to Chaotic around the time that they were declaring bankruptcy, which ultimately led to Chaotic's cancellation and then subsequently 4Kids' disposal of themselves. And while the card game and the anime are not alive today, they actually do have a pretty sizable cult following. And Brian C. Cannon has actually gone on record as saying that he wants to bring Chaotic back, going so far as to even post all of the Chaotic episodes onto YouTube on the Chaotic YouTube channel. And they're currently posting still in other languages than English. He's trying to get the card game back. But what's so special about Chaotic? Like, why do people like this game when I didn't care about it when it was happening? Well, let's go over the game a little bit and maybe you'll share some of my love for this game as well as other people's. Now, while this is going to be a simple card game review just like my last video, I don't want to go over all of the lore. Maybe I'll do a separate supplementary video for Chaotic lore later because it is very interesting, but to get into the game, before we can talk about the gameplay basics, you kind of have to know just a little bit about how Chaotic works in its world. So let's go over that a little bit. The story of Chaotic takes place on another world called Param, which has its own 5 tribes of creatures. The first of these tribes is the Overworlders, the creatures that live on Param's overworld, its top side, essentially, kind of just like normal people. The second tribe are the Underworlders. They live in Param's underground. It works kind of like hell, if that's what you want to think of it, but not really. The third of the tribes is the Mepedians, a lizard race of creatures that live in Chaotic's overworld, mainly in deserts and stuff like that. The fourth tribe is the Danians. They can move freely between the underworld and the overworld, and they're insectoid type creatures. They look really close to ants and beetles and stuff like that. And then the fifth tribe is the Marillions, a tribe of mind-controlling fish that live behind the doors of the deep mines and have control of the Kothica, a magical stone that's not really explained well in the Chaotic anime. All of this is supplemental information, but there you have it, the tribes. Hey, it's me from editing here. I realized as I was editing that I forgot to talk about tribeless creatures. They're just creatures with no tribe. That's what their symbol looks like. There we go, back to the show. There was a point in time in which all of Param's tribes lived in peace with each other with the Kothica, but ultimately the power of the Kothica became too much. All of the tribes began warring with each other, and eventually the Marillions grabbed the Kothica and were locked behind the doors of the deep mines. You can see a lot of the unfriendliness between tribes when you play the chaotic game. Some creatures have a keyword on them called loyal, meaning that they can only be in a deck with creatures of their tribes. Other than those creatures, you can mix as many creatures from different tribes up as you want. In the world of Param, they do use a type of magic called music. Music plus magic. It's musical magic. And you usually get music by taking souls of old musicians, I think, if I'm reading into that correctly. And again, when you play the game of Chaotic, all of these factors are taking into effect not only the creatures and their different tribes, but also the music they can use and the attacks that they can do to each other, the different types of equipment that they use that's called battle gear, and the locations that they live in. And with that being said, let's jump into the game and show you it. Maybe you'll like it. This is a Chaotic playmat. When you're playing Chaotic, I would recommend using one of these playmats or getting a custom one done because it has this little area over here, which takes care of all of your creature's stats, which we'll go over right now. Each creature card has a few different stats to pay attention to. On the left side of the card, we have our discipline. These are, in order, courage, power, speed, and wisdom. These disciplines only matter if they are affected by attack cards or battle gear or something like that. On the right side of the card, we have our elements. They are fire, earth, wind, and water. If a creature has this element, it'll be colored in on their element side of things. If they don't, then it'll be blacked out. But if they do, then they can use elemental damage on their attack on top of their base damage. On the bottom right-hand corner of the card, we have the creature's energy. This is the creature's health that they're going to have throughout the battle. After each battle is over, the standing creature gains its health back at the end of the player turn. And finally, on the bottom right, we have the music counters. These counters can tell you if a creature can use music, and if they can, how many music they can cast, or how many music counters you can pay to cast one music. Think like mana in Magic the Gathering. When you're playing Chaotic, you can play with as many creatures as you want to play with, as long as they can create this triangle formation here. The normal amount of creatures that people play with is usually between 1 versus 1, 3 versus 3, or 6 versus 6. The amount of creatures you have is always going to be the same amount as your opponent. So we're going to put our creatures down on the board right now. I've got 3 Overworlders. I've got Gespidan, Zerv, and Frafdo. When you play, if you have a specific deck tech in mind, you can strategize which of your monsters are going to be on your front lines and which are going to be in your back row. Now, each of our monsters is going to have 1 battle gear. When we start the game, we're going to take our battle gear and place them under our monster. I like to place them down at the bottom. Some people like to place them over on the top, but you can place them however you'd like. Next, we have our attack deck. Since we're playing 3 creatures, we're only going to have 10 cards in this deck. But if you're playing with 6 or more creatures, you're going to have 20 cards. There are a couple of parts of the attack cards that we need to look at as well. The first thing we should notice is the large box in the text box with a number in it. This is the base attack. No matter what, when you play an attack card, this is the damage that's going to go through. The other little boxes next to it are for elemental damage. If a creature has that element, it can deal that much additional damage. Then the text box will sometimes have another effect that you can do, or something to do with dealing a little more damage based on disciplines or something else like that. The second part we have to look at is in the top left-hand corner of the card. There will be a number. This is the build cost for your attack deck. When you're building an attack deck, your build cost cannot exceed the amount of cards that you have in your deck. So if you're playing a 1v1 or a 3v3, that build cost can't equal more than 10. If you're playing a 6v6 or higher, that build cost can't be more than 20. Next up, we have our music. We're going to have one music for each creature on the field. At the top of the text box of each music card, it will give you a tribe, or it will say generic if the music doesn't have a tribe, in which case any creature can use it. But creatures are mostly ascribed to their tribe of music. The music will also have a music counter symbol here. Sometimes it'll be more than one, and that's the amount of music counters that you need to pay to cast the music. And remember, only creatures with music counters on them can use the music that we have in our hand. These music are always going to stay in our hand during the game. And lastly, we have our location deck. The locations are going to help us with our turn and how we battle. Since I'm playing a 3 creature deck, I only have 5 locations right now. But if you're playing 6 or more, you're going to be using 10. And we're going to place that up here in the location section of the playmat. There are 2 parts to location cards. The first is their overall text box. This will usually have an effect that is either standing throughout the turn or you can activate at some point in time. The second and arguably most important part of the locations is the initiative. Initiative determines which creature goes first when a creature attacks another one. If the creature has the higher of the 2 in the initiative value, then it goes first. Otherwise, the turn player goes first. To start the game, we take our hand of 3 music, we're going to put 2 attack cards in our hand, and then we're going to start, choosing who goes first randomly. So I have my hand here, I'm ready to go. Let's say I start first. I'm going to flip over the top of my location deck. It's going to give me an initiative and a base effect that can be activated at any time. Then I'm going to choose a creature and move it towards another creature. So I'm going to move my Zerv to fight Fosh. When you begin battle, you're going to flip your battle gear over under your creature. Now that battle gear is active for this battle. We're going to draw 1 card from our deck. We're going to look at the initiative, and whichever creature has the highest of that initiative or the most of that initiative goes first. If the creatures are equal, then the turn player, which is me, will go first instead. Then, me and the other player will take our turns playing down attack cards to attack the other creature, and then passing it to the other person, and then when it comes back to our turn, we are going to draw another card and go again. That continues until one of the creature's energies is wiped out and the other creature moves into their place. When you're done with battle on your turn, you can decide to move your other 2 creatures around if you'd like to, then you move your location card to the bottom of your deck, and we pass the turn. And those are the basics of Chaotic. It's a pretty simple game, but it's also chaotic to play. You've got so many pieces that you have to keep track of. Honestly, there's not much else to the gameplay basics than that. There are some other keywords and effects of attacks that you need to know to play the game, but I just showed you the basics of how to play. If you wanted to pick up like a starter deck, you could just start now, maybe. Each starter deck does come with a rulebook, and the most useful thing that Chaotic has, that as far as I've seen no other card game has, is that in the back of each rulebook, it has a glossary of all of the keyword abilities and what they do. So you always have a dictionary of Chaotic with you when you have a rulebook. Now, Chaotic isn't as easy to get into as Yu-Gi-Oh! The card game is kind of expensive and steadily climbing, and if you want to play it online, the official Chaotic website has been down for years. The only things you can play with are fan-made content like Chaotic Recode, but unless you know how to play the game itself, it's going to be kind of confusing to get into that way. I don't know, maybe this card game will be easier to get into when Brian finally releases it again to the public. We know that he's going to, we just don't know when it's coming. The cool thing about chaotic, though, is that if you do get into it, there's not really a whole lot of like making a top tier deck to it. Like you can find deck techs on YouTube if you look up top tier chaotic deck, but in reality, your chaotic deck is just as good as you make it, as good as you can play it. If you're a good strategist, you can be great with your chaotic deck, even against top tier chaotic decks that other people make. Unless you're playing Passive, whose effect isn't super great currently, but who knows, maybe we'll get a good battle gear for him in the future, who knows. And then you also have like crazy cards like Zamul, Lord von Blutz Enforcer, or Cerulean the Song Thief. But, you know, it's a fun card game. I would highly, highly encourage you, if you have the money for it, to get into chaotic. If you don't, I would say watch some videos. Watch the anime that's on the Chaotic official YouTube channel. I'll link them down in the description. It's just a fun card game, and unlike other card game animes, the anime focuses more on having fun than something like friendship, which it does focus on, but it's more about teaching people to have fun with the card game and not take it so seriously. Well, I've rambled on long enough, and this video is kind of long now, so let's get into my final thoughts, my final review of Chaotic. How do I feel about it? So, Chaotic. For its courage, I will give it a 9. For its power, I'll give it a 7. For its speed, I'll give it a 7 as well. And for its wisdom, I'll give it a 6. And that's it. I think it's a pretty well-rounded card game. I really like it personally. I think it's a really great card game to play with your friends. I've played it with a couple of my friends, teaching them how to play for the first time, and they've loved it. So if you like card games, go ahead and get Chaotic. And with that, that is the end of the video. We've done another card game review. I know that it's been a long time since I released the Yu-Gi-Oh! One. I wanted to release these weekly or bi-weekly, and my video editor just shat out on me. I finally have been able to buy a new one, so hopefully you're getting this when I intend you to get this video. Other than that, more content coming soon. Like I said, more card game reviews. Like I said before, more Magnus Archives fan stuff is coming. I might also have a little bit of something cooking up in my old brain there. As usual, I'll leave all my links down below. I want to thank all of the new subscribers for coming and watching my content. It does mean a whole bunch to me. And until next time, drink your water.